Home to the country's first spa, a castle, and a town named after a wild fruit tree. I'm Wayne Worth, and you're watching On the Road in West Virginia, R55 County's Morgan County. Before the warm, healing waters of what we call Berkeley Springs today was discovered by many of the more prominent white settlers to the region, much of this area was said to be sparsely settled by squatters during the 1730s. Now, of course, this is only hearsay because typically squatters are not the best at documenting their settlement. 1748 would bring some changes to what we call Morgan County today, as Lord Fairfax, who owned just about all the eastern panhandle, had the region surveyed and granted much of the land to people of importance, who then essentially sold it to many of the early settlers. One member of Lord Fairfax's surveying team was a 16-year-old boy named George Washington, who stumbled upon this great natural wonder that we call Berkeley Springs today. It's been said that when George Washington arrived in Berkeley Springs in 1748, many people were already visiting these warm springs through stories passed down by the Native Americans. Now, of course, when word got back to Lord Fairfax and the colonial elite, Berkeley Springs overnight became America's first spa resort, as many bathed in these year-round 70-degree springs in an attempt to cure some of their health ailments. Even during the American Revolution, many wounded soldiers in the Continental Army would come to town and utilize these healing waters. As for the town, it was originally called Bath, which today is still its official name. However, back in its early years, the town shared the same name as another Virginia town, which logistically caused serious issues with the mail. So the post office name for Bath became Berkeley Springs, which is still used to this day. At any rate, the town during the late 1700s through the 18 and 1900s would prosper as a resort town and tourist destination, as several hotels were built to accommodate visitors. Of course, these hotels were made of wood, and repeated fires would definitely take its toll. Now, Morgan County would play a small part in the Civil War, and it was mainly due to this railroad behind me. The coming of the B&O Railroad during the early 1840s was a significant game changer to the county, as it connected the county with Baltimore and Washington, D.C. However, during the Civil War, it was also a major target for the Confederacy. To put it simply, if the B&O Railroad ran through your county, you could definitely expect some action, and that it did in Morgan County. Well, I would say it wasn't a lot of action, but in 1862, Clarksburg's own General Stonewall Jackson and his Confederate Army would set up shop in Berkeley Springs during their bombardment on Hancock, Maryland, just 10 miles north, as a way to disrupt service on the B&O for the Union Army. Post-Civil War industries in Morgan County mainly consisted of large-scale agriculture, and towns like Paw Paw, which is named after a wild fruit which we call West Virginia's banana, would be the center of this boom. Now, the boom in agriculture was not your typical cattle and chicken farm, but mainly peach and apple orchards, which dominated Paw Paw in the eastern panhandle region. And we can't forget about tomatoes either, as the early part of the 20th century saw a significant boom in that industry, and canneries dotted the region. Now, apples has been such a big part of Morgan County's history that every year since 1973, its heritage has been celebrated in Berkeley Springs through the Apple Butter Festival, which brings thousands of people to town. As the 1930s rolled in, so did the Great Depression, as many people were out of work. But the Great Depression also gave birth to the Civilian Conservation Corps, and one project that would bear fruit for Morgan County for years to come. Well, the CCC project to build Capon State Park didn't literally bear fruit like the apple orchards did in the county, but it sure did enhance the county's prominence as being a major tourist hub in the D.C.-Baltimore region. Over the years, the park has grown into a resort with the construction of an 18-hole golf course and the expansion of a 50-room lodge, which was built in 1956. Today, Capon State Park is one of our state's most popular parks. Morgan County throughout the rest of the 20th century saw a steady decline in the orchard industry, with its main industries being sand mining, which is used to make glass, and tourism, which has been around since the early settlers started bathing in Berkeley Springs. However, we can't end the story of Morgan County without at least mentioning the Berkeley Castle. To make a long story short, this dude named Samuel Taylor Suit, who was 46 years old and a former colonel in the Civil War, fell in love with a young lady named Rosa Pelham, who was 17 years old. After a few years of trying to convince her to marry him, she finally said yes, under one condition, that he build her a castle. And that is what old Sam did. Unfortunately for Mr. Suit, he died during the construction of the castle, and after it was completed, Rosa partied like it was 1999. Well, let's say 1899, because the castle was completed in 1891. In the end, Rosa's lifestyle would finally catch up with her, and by the early 1900s she ran out of money, the castle was sold at public auction, and she moved into a small house where she would spend most of her days raising chickens. The things we do for love. I'm Wayne Worth, and until next time, always remember, what we value and hold important to our lives today came from events that happened yesterday, and it's when we begin to understand the events of yesterday that we fully embrace today, which makes tomorrow become less of a mystery.